Pixar was once a thriving animation studio. In 1995, they dropped Toy Story and changed everything. It was creative, fun, and most importantly, was the first ever animated film to use computer-generated imagery. And with their new innovative technology, they just went crazy. A Bug's Life, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Up, Cars, Ratatouille, and WALL-E. Gone were the days of hand-drawing each individual frame of animation. They paved the way for the industry and decided to grace their newfound fans with some sequels to these instant classics. Toy Story 3, a film about what it means to grow up and move on, with even better visuals than the previous two films, wrapping the trilogy up with a perfect little bow, with a nice tux and shiny shoes. Cars 2 was pretty bad, but they had to have had a stinker at some point. 11 wins and 1 loss, that's a pretty good track record. Then they decided to try and make another original movie with Brave, which also wasn't good. I mean, what are they even trying to say, what the fuck? Pixar then delved their hands into making a prequel about Monsters Inc. with Monsters University. They were back on the up and up, baby, and couldn't be stopped. Inside Out. They're on a winning streak, they just can't lose anymore, let's go! This is what I call the piss poor era of Pixar. You had your standouts like Coco, but they were on a money high. Sequel after sequel, nostalgia bait after nostalgia bait. This isn't to say that no effort was put in. The animation got better and better with each film. Everything was photorealistic, like look at that water. But the issue was that it became an industry standard. The animation wasn't unique anymore. Their writing, characters, and stories became bland, uninteresting, forgettable. A skeleton of who they once were. And it's not like Pixar had much competition, maybe for a brief period with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs from Sony, but they royally disgraced themselves with the Emoji Movie. You had the Lego Movie and Lego Batman Movie from Warner Brothers, which were great, but something needed to change. A more permanent solution. A new norm. Enter Phil Lord and Chris Miller with Into the Spider-Verse. Sony Animation was thought to be dead. Smurfs, the Emoji Movie, Sausage Party. But then the people that made the Lego Movie and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs decided to help old Sony out in their animation department. The team created new technology that mixed 2D and 3D, and combined hand-drawn and computer-generated images. This was art. Every frame of the movie burned into my brain. Not only was it a fresh take on Spider-Man with a great story, amazing writing, and interesting characters, but it was innovative and unique, and it revolutionized the industry again. It was a necessary change of pace from the photorealism we were getting from Pixar and other animation studios. It was like it came straight out of a comic book, with the varying FPS, the lights and reflections being ink dots, shadows being lines, and the non-use of motion blur, and instead something way more creative. You get the point. Spider-Verse used the medium of animation and pushed it to its limits, while Pixar is still stuck in 1995. After Spider-Verse came out, the impact and influence it had on the industry followed closely behind. Specifically, Netflix went crazy. The Mitchells vs. the Machines brought the same team from Spider-Verse to create a movie about a family stopping an AI takeover. And just look at that art style.
You gonna make me act up.
Klaus, while kind of doing the opposite of Spider-Verse and instead doing traditional 2D animation with a mix of 3D lighting, is a beautiful film, and it was a risk. It was creative, it was unique. There are so many other Netflix films and shows that took inspiration from Spider-Verse. Nimona, Intergalactic, Arcane, and Death, Love, and Robots to name a few. Specifically that last one, nobody talks about Death, Love, and Robots, and I don't know why, but the two most prominent episodes I can think of are Suits and The Tall Grass. Then there was Dreamworks, the studio that brought you How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek, and Kung Fu Panda. They decided to get in on the Spider-Verse action with The Bad Guys and of course Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. The Bad Guys was based on a book series of the same name, and Puss in Boots was a sequel to the movie made in 2011. Puss in Boots in particular being an even bigger risk, with themes like mortality and anxiety, and it really just has no right being as good as it is. The most recent movie to take a slice out of the Spider-Verse pie was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem.
That's what the mask is! I think you're a fat.
This was big for Nickelodeon, since they hadn't taken a risk like this since 2011 with Rango. Thankfully it paid off, and the director of the movie, Jeff Rowe, said this in an interview.
The first Spider-Verse really opened a lot of doors. It really made it okay for studios to take a chance on a film looking unique and maybe having a little more sophistication and emotional maturity in its storytelling. And it was such a seismic shift that it became expected. Suddenly, making movies that looked like the style of CG animation over the past 30 years felt dated.
I think this really is just the most accurate statement you could make. Much like Pixar did, Spider-Verse paved the way for studios to take more and more risks. The possibilities were endless now. Sony knew this, and were about to go full throttle. So Across the Spider-Verse came out, somehow was better than the original, and is the best movie of the year, hands down. Phil Lord and Chris Miller knew that they had to go even bigger and better with the sequel. So Sony brought in over 1,000 animators. Hobie Brown, Spider-Punk, This guy, it took over 3 years to animate him alone, and to their credit, he looks fucking awesome. The movie was ambitious to say the least. Over 240 spider people across multiple different universes, with an even better soundtrack, better visuals, some pretty cool cameos that actually serve the story, and an incredible team working on the project. This movie really is just an absolute spectacle in all honesty. It's still so astonishing that the first movie's budget was $90 million, and this movie's budget was only $100 million. And Pixar's Lightyear had a $200 million budget. Like, where did that money go? Truly one of the greatest movies of all time. So this begs the question as to why the hell Pixar is still making movies that cost over $200 million when they don't even break even and the movies are fucking dog shit. Really, it comes down to greed. They made Toy Story 4, which sucked and had no reason to exist, but it made over $1 billion. They're so greedy that they're making Inside Out 2, Frozen 3, Zootopia 2, and of course they're making Toy Story 5. It's ridiculous that all these other studios can adapt, change, take risks, and evolve with the current animation climate with zero issues, but Pixar, once ahead of their time, are stuck in the past. Not only would it please your fans, but it would cost so much less money and you'd probably get an even bigger box office return. Turning Red, Luca, Soul, Lightyear, and Onward all cost well over $150 million, and literally none of them broke even. Pixar has lost at the very least $900 million, and that's excluding the marketing budget for these films. At this point, they're just throwing money away, it's so dumb. Pixar has officially lost its war to Sony, and of course I don't want Pixar to die and keep making bad movies, but they just can't help themselves. But if Pixar dying means that more movies like Spider-Verse and Puss in Boots can get lifted up from the depths and get the attention they rightfully deserve, it pains me to say, but good riddance. I want Disney and Pixar to take risks and be creative, not keep making remakes and sequels of better movies that don't need them. This even goes outside of animation as well. It's insane that I thought Sony was a lost cause and then they came out swinging with Spider-Verse and pushing studios out of their comfort zones. Sony and Spider-Verse saved animation, and if not for them deciding to take a leap of faith, animation as a medium probably would have met a much different fate. Well, that rhymed, what the fuck?